And the project had ground on for a couple of years, and they couldn't make this chip meet the specifications. Finally, the project was canceled. The chip is thrown in the trash. And then some engineer digs it out, and he says, you know what we could do with this? We can't hit a plane in flight with a missile with this thing. But you know what we can do with it? We could make a little desktop computer with this. And these guys said, why in the hell would we want to do that? We have enormous computers. We have computers the size of a city block. Why would we want to do that? You say, no, you don't understand. Not for us. We have the godlike technology. It's a commercial thing. We can sell it to the marks, and they can word process with it or something. So it came to be. But then they didn't understand that these things, it's a pretty harmless thing, a computer sitting on a desktop with Word running on it. But you sell 20 million of them, and before you realize, my God, they can all be connected together. And then people just plug them in, and an entirely new beast springs into being. A technology so powerful that the head of the CIA 10 years ago didn't have that kind of access to information, that kind of access to real-time imaging, that kind of access to econometric data and that sort of thing. And so it escaped. And so while they were watching while they were keeping us from building nuclear weapons, they seemed to do that rather well. No terrorist has ever set off a thermonuclear device, so far as we know. So they were watching from the ramparts for that because it was something they could understand. This thing came rushing in the back door, and now the cat is out of the bag. Yeah, was it Scott? I'm sure that that's true. I'm sure that that's true. The fact that the IRS is running on 20-year-old computers. The government is just being left behind. And the world corporate state doesn't care. It finds governments a huge and boring nuisance. In the same way that after the 30 Years' War, basically there was an enormous social shift in Europe. Before the 30 Years' War, Europe was ruled by popes and kings. After the 30 Years' War, it was ruled by parliaments and peoples. That's a generalization, but true. Well, now, the nation-state is being put out to pasture. It's being told, as the church was told in the 17th century, you care for the poor. You take care of the highways. You bury the dead, and you educate the children. But all the stuff which makes money, we, the new streamlined form of social organization, will take care of the money-making enterprise, and your job is to keep the roads cleared and the dead out of sight. And so this is happening. When I understood this, it was like a bolt of lightning. When Jesse Helms stood up on the floor of the U.S. Senate and called for the assassination of the American president, I realized this has become a circus. These people are yahoos. When was the last time a governor of the World Bank threatened the life of an American president? When was the last time that someone who sits on the board of directors of the IMF felt the need to physically threaten the life of a president? No, it doesn't happen. Real power doesn't act that way. Only pseudo-power, Yahoo power, thug power acts that way. And so government has become largely irrelevant. And I don't know whether this is good or bad. It certainly is complex. War was an instrument of national policy for governments. War is not an instrument of policy for corporations. They hate war. But governments kept cultures in a deep freeze. we spend a lot of time lamenting the destruction of Aboriginal cultures, this rainforest tribe, that Central Mexican language group, so forth and so on. But while we're lamenting the loss of these exotic cultures, notice that your culture is being erased. If you were, raised in a close-knit Jewish family, if you were raised in a small town in the Midwest, those cultures are gone for most people. We have all been given mall culture and commodification of values. It isn't only happening to the Witoto and the Huichol, it's happening everywhere. And this uniformitarianism of culture is entirely for the convenience of market economy. If you can get everyone drinking the same brand of vodka, it's much easier to sell and market vodka than if you have to appeal to ethnicity and local tastes and so forth and so on. So everything is being leveled, dumbed down, and subjected to a hideous homogenization process. No, I think people, this leads to the brink of the question about paranoia and conspiracy theory. I am very puzzled by the popularity of conspiracy theory. It seems to me it must just indicate a paranoid tendency in the population, because what I see is the more you aspire to control, the more frustrated and maddened you must be by the situation. So, an example would be the Communist Party of the USSR. Infinite power to penetrate the lives of people, to manipulate media images. You have total control of the newspapers, total control of TV, total control, and then the top guy dumps the whole thing. So I think that no one is in charge, and that this is a very good thing, because it allows the internal dynamic of the situation to express itself. Everybody who wants to control the situation is fighting a losing battle. And if you bank with chaos, your stock just keeps growing exponentially. Chaos is spreading. It's the place to put your bets. All efforts to ideologically or economically or any other way channel the global process seems to meet with incredible frustration. Nobody is in charge. The so-called great successful conspiracies of history are so successful they don't even think of themselves as conspiracies. If you've been running a given piece of turf for 500 or 600 years, you don't run around in conspiratorial mode. You stride boldly across the landscape. It's yours. You own it. You think, you suppose. Oh, you mean if only Hitler were alive in Argentina calling the shots? It would all make so much more sense then. That would explain things. In the absence of an overarching demon like that, it's a little hard to explain things. I don't know. I don't feel this need for intellectual closure. I don't see why things should make sense. They never have. And they're always in process of formation. And as soon as any given goal or benchmark is achieved, it's abandoned and redefined in favor of something else. No, I think conspiracy theory is a very disempowering thing, because what it says is you can't control the world, or it's more difficult to control the world than you think it is. Not so. I've had a very different experience. My experience with the corridors of power, if you want to put it that way, is that there are an immense number of clueless people. It's almost like McKenna's law. It's that as you advance in social hierarchy, the percentage of smart people does not increase. So, we could now, let's move to a cabinet meeting of the Clinton administration. There are as many stupid people, truly moronic people, sitting in that room as there are sitting in this room. It doesn't seem to make any difference because people don't find their seats according to intellectual or social merit. Every human situation is bedeviled by morons. No matter how high you rise, you're surrounded by fools. And you're lucky if you're not one of them. I mean, that's the basic thing to try and guard against. And the other thing is, at the top, it's remarkably empty. You think, if you've never been there, that toward the top of the control pyramid, there must be many people standing in line, eager to take the helm, eager to make big decisions and establish their reputations and do whatever they do. Instead, what you find is fear as you go up the hierarchy. My God, if I make this decision and it goes wrong, I will lose my chairmanship, or I will lose my something or other. So as you approach these enormously powerful levers for manipulating society, everybody's holding their hands behind their back. They don't want their fingerprints on the lever because they know, that there could be war crimes trials if you stumble and get it wrong. I mean, you may have thought you were on a golden crusade. Suddenly you're looking at 12 guys in powdered wigs who think you're a jerk, and they're going to hang you for the stunt you pulled. So it's like that. I used to think it was not true that all spiritual work began with oneself. I felt like that was a way of disempowering people and saying, if you wait until you're an avatar, you'll never join the people rioting in the street. And I used to say, if you see people rioting, you have a moral obligation to join. You don't even have to know what it's about. The people rioting is a sufficient imperative to political action to be there. Well, I'm not 25 anymore. That provided a lot of fun, but I now think, you do not make a unflawed contribution unless you have first gotten your ducks somewhat in order. I'm not saying you have to be able to walk on water, but you have to have at least considered your own life and your values and that sort of thing. It's pretty simple, the ethical life. It's just demanding. Many of you have heard me say this. This is Father McKenna talking to you. The moral life does not consist of wheatgrass diet or affirmations or any of that. The moral life is, unless you're at Esalen, you should clothe the naked, you should feed the hungry, comfort the afflicted, bury the dead, and there are a couple others obvious things to be done. It's not about how many prostrations you do or what lineage you've associated yourself with or how much cholesterol is in your diet. And somehow we have confused the ethical and moral dimension with the dimension of physical practices. Probably because we have been too infected by the memes of tired Asian religions that long ago gave up moral philosophy in favor of rotational activity, because the social problems of Asia are overwhelming. That's a response to an overwhelming human tragedy. the quietism of Asian religion. I